Hi crafters, I'm Alex Vanover with Divine Design Crafts. I bought a Cricut in December of 2016 because I got engaged and I knew I wanted to DIY my wedding, and I haven't stopped crafting since. Keep watching for everything you need to know to get started with making projects with heat transfer vinyl. Heat transfer vinyl has a couple of different names, but they're all the same product. Heat transfer vinyl is also abbreviated as HTV, and sometimes it's also called iron-on because Cricut's brand of heat transfer vinyl is called iron-on. So all of those are the same product. HTV is a product that Cricut crafters use to apply projects to fabric. Just like its name implies, heat transfer vinyl requires a heat source, such as an iron or a heat press, in order to activate the adhesive and help it to stick on fabric. First, let's talk about the tools you'll need to work with heat transfer vinyl. First, you'll need a weeding tool. I use a pin pen from 651vinyl.com. All the tools and all the different types of vinyl I'm going to talk about today are all from 651vinyl.com. That's my favorite place to buy vinyl, and not only do I like it because they have amazing customer service and fast shipping, but they are also a reputable company. You'll learn as a crafter that people buy vinyl from lots of different sources, including Amazon and the craft store. But my rule is you get what you pay for, and you know that when you buy things from 651vinyl.com, they're always going to be great products that are backed up by their guarantee. Next, for heat transfer vinyl, you'll need a pair of scissors. You may need a pressing pillow to elevate seams with certain projects. If you don't have a pressing pillow, you can also use a folded up kitchen towel. And you'll need a Teflon sheet. If you don't have a Teflon sheet, you can also use a piece of parchment paper, but be careful not to use wax paper because wax paper will stick to your project. But parchment paper is going to protect your heat source from getting HTV on it. And lastly, you're going to need a household iron or a heat press, and I'll show you how to apply HTV with both of those later in this video. One unique thing about heat transfer vinyl is that the carrier sheet is already included on heat transfer vinyl most of the time. So we have a saying in the Cricut world, shiny side down to cut HTV. The shiny side is actually the carrier sheet, and what's on the back is actually the heat transfer vinyl. So when you cut heat transfer vinyl on your Cricut, you're going to cut shiny side down, which means the carrier sheet is laying against the mat, and the Cricut blade is actually going to cut into the HTV through the back. Then when you weed away the excess HTV, you're left with a sticky carrier sheet. The carrier sheet holds, which is basically HTV transfer tape, holds the design intact so that you can apply it to your garment without distorting the HTV. So now we're going to talk about some different types of vinyl. And as I said, there are lots of places to buy heat transfer vinyl and lots of places that carry lots of different products. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the vinyl that 651 Vinyl carries. This is Caesar Easy Weed. That's the most basic type of vinyl. It comes with a fairly shiny finish and is available in tons of different colors. Next is Caesar Stretch HTV. Stretch is best used for tight-fitting shirts that are going to be stretched a lot, especially shirts that are tight-fitted over a woman's chest really benefit from Stretch HTV. It's also great for exercise or dry fit type of shirts that stretch a lot when they're worn. The tricky thing about Caesar Stretch HTV is that it requires firm pressure to be applied, so it can be hard to apply with an iron, but it can be done. Next is Glitter HTV, which is just as its name implies, it has a glittered texture. When you take the carrier sheet off of Glitter HTV, you can feel a slight texture of glitter on it, and it is a bit of a thicker vinyl. So you'll definitely want to check the cut settings document on the left side of 651vinyl.com. I'll put a picture of where you can download it right here. Make sure you check that document before you cut any new HTV product, including Caesar Glitter, because it has a unique cut setting. Most crafters like to cut it on the custom setting Glitter Iron-On. That seems to cut through glitter vinyl really great, but every machine is different, so make your test cuts as needed. Printed Pattern HTV is a really fun product to work with. It's really easy to use, but there is one difference between Printed Pattern HTV and most other HTVs, and that is that Printed Pattern HTV does not come with a carrier sheet over top of it. That means when you cut it, you do not mirror Printed Pattern HTV, and then you apply the heat transfer mask after you cut the design and weed it in order to transfer it onto your garment. It's not hard to do, but sometimes it is hard to remember because it's different from the rest of HTV. This is Caesar holographic vinyl. As you can see, it's gorgeous and sparkly, but again, this one has some tricky cut settings. So make sure you check the cut settings document to make sure that you cut it correctly and don't waste a bunch of vinyl on the wrong cut setting. Strip Flock Pro is another unique Caesar HTV. It's quite a bit thicker than other HTVs, and this works best on products like fleece blankets, socks, beach towels, things like that that are much thicker, because it doesn't have very much stretch, so it doesn't work very well for designs that stretch across the chest. But it's a really fun product to work with, and it's really nice and soft. So I don't have time to tell you about every single kind of HTV that 651 vinyl carries, but those are just some of the basic ones that you'll want to make sure that you know about. And after you start with Easy Weed, you'll want to get brave and check out. Many heat transfer vinyls apply differently, so make sure that you check the cut settings document on the left side of 651vinyl.com before cutting large designs of any new kind of HTV. If you're ever in doubt if a cut setting is right, do a test cut. A test cut is taking a small 1-inch design like a circle or a star from Cricut Design Space Basic Shapes and cutting it with the material and the settings you think you need to use. Then if the design cuts and weeds well, then you know that you got the design. Then you know you got the cut setting correct. If it didn't weed well, then you know to adjust your settings before using an entire sheet on a design. Remember that unless you're using printed pattern HTV, you always want to click the mirror button in Design Space. I'm going to show you how to mirror your HTV when we do our first project together. Don't forget to have a household iron or a heat press nearby when working with heat transfer vinyl, because you're going to need it to activate the adhesive. Let's get started with your first HTV project. We're going to jump into Design Space and I'll show you what to do. If you learned something in this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and let me know. I'm going to start by inserting some text, and I'm going to make a simple shirt for my niece and nephew for football season that says Who Dey, because I'm from Cincinnati and I'm a Cincinnati football fan. So once I have my word typed out, I want to go into fonts and change the font. One of my favorite non-script fonts is a font called Babus New, and that's what I'm going to use for this project because it's super easy to weed and nice and thick. You'll also notice that I went over to my system fonts because that way I don't get any Cricut fonts that I have to pay for mixed into my project. So I'm going to search for it. Here it is, Babus New. If you want to look it up on Google, I'm sure you can find it free, I believe on dafont.com. So once my font is selected, I'm going to go up to the size and I'm going to change it to the size that I need it for my project. So for my nephew's shirt, I'm going to make it 6 inches wide. Then I'm going to right click on my design and duplicate it. And for my niece who wears a smaller size, I'm going to make my design 5 inches wide. But they're both the same color, so they're going to cut on the same mat. But before I move to the next screen, I'm going to save my project in case I have to come back to it for any reason. I'm going to title it Who Dey. And I don't like to keep my projects public. I don't know why, but I just have a funny thing about that. So once it's saved, we can move on to the Make It screen. And you'll notice that my Cricut has arranged the letters in the best vinyl saving way that it knows how, but I'm actually going to move the second Who Dey below the first one so that I can cut the vinyl in a different way. When you're cutting Easy Weed HTV or pretty much any HTV except for printed pattern HTV, you always want to turn on the mirror function on your mat, and you'll notice that they look backwards. So after we've mirrored, we're going to click Continue. Once your machine connects, you'll want to be sure and adjust the material that it's set to the correct material. When you're cutting Caesar Easy Weed, you just need to use the iron on setting. And if you have an Explorer model, you can turn the dial to iron on. If you have a Cricut Maker, you'll be able to select the material right here. And Design Space is nice, and it reminds you to turn the mirror on. For a lot of us crafters, that doesn't always work. Sometimes we still forget, but at least there's a reminder. Once you're ready to cut your project, I'm going to lay my vinyl shiny side down onto the mat. As we discussed before, the carrier sheet is already attached to heat transfer vinyl, so the shiny side is the carrier sheet. So I'm going to lay the shiny side down onto the mat because the back of this is the actual heat transfer vinyl. That's what the Cricut's going to cut. So when we're finished, it will have cut through the HTV, but the carrier sheet will be intact on the other side so that we can transfer our project to our shirt without altering the design. You want to do your best to get rid of any bubbles or wrinkles, but they're not too big of a deal. And when the arrow button is blinking on your Cricut, you can load your mat by pressing it. Then when the Cricut button blinks, press go. When the arrow button blinks again, that means your project is done, so you can unload your project. And now you're ready to weed your heat transfer vinyl. Now trim away the excess vinyl that the Cricut hasn't cut. Now I'm going to use my pin weeding tool to weed away the excess HTV that's not a part of the design. So I'm going to start by using the sharp needle point, going in the corner of my design and lifting my HTV. Some parts of the design will just pull away like this. Then I'll go back with my pin pen and get the more intricate pieces that my first pull did not get. The carrier sheet is really sticky, so it will keep all of the letters in place. Now, as you can see when we flip it over, this is how we're going to apply it to our garment. So first I'm going to cut the designs apart. I'm going to set this aside to show you how to apply it on the heat press. Since many of you are just starting out, I'm going to show you how to apply an HTV design with an iron first. Before you press your design, make sure that you're using a flat, hard surface. Your ironing board is not recommended because when you push with the iron, it may buckle and it may not get very good contact with the design. So I'm using my craft table. Then you're going to lay out a towel to protect your surface from the heat. Then you want to lay out your shirt so that you can lightly iron it and get rid of any wrinkles. Make sure that your iron is set on the highest setting with no steam. We'll preheat the garment and get any wrinkles out. Then it's time to lay down your heat transfer vinyl. I'm going to apply mine about 2 inches underneath the collar. To make sure that your designs are straight, I just line up the sides of the design with the collar to determine if it's centered. Then you want to place a piece of parchment paper or a Teflon sheet if you have it over top of your design. Then I'm going to use my iron to press one side and then the other side of the design. I'm not going to slide the iron between the two. I'm going to put down, push, pick up, and then do the other side. Normally, I would turn my iron sideways and I would press the whole design at once, but I'm going to show you guys how to do a design that's a little bit larger and would take 2 presses. So I'm going to flip my iron backwards so that I'm using the bigger side of the iron. And I'm going to put it over the first half of my design and push down and count to between 10 and 15. Then I'm going to pick straight up, go to the other side of the design, and press the other side. I'm applying medium pressure to my iron. After you've pressed the whole design, take off your sheet and see how well your HTV has stuck. Depending on the HTV you're using, you can peel the carrier sheet hot right away, or you may have to wait for it to cool. With Easy Weed, you can peel it hot. When using an iron, I like to put the Teflon sheet back over the design and give it one final press without the carrier sheet. But I wouldn't do this with a heat press. And there you have it, not so hard. It does get a little bit harder with adult designs because they are a little larger than kids' designs. Next, I'm going to show you how to press a design on the heat press. The first thing you want to do is set your heat press to the correct settings for your HTV. I am using Caesar Easy Weed, so my heat press is set to 305 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 seconds. First, I'm going to push the press down and preheat my shirt for a couple of seconds. Notice that the Teflon sheet is already attached to my heat press so that I don't have to lay it over the design each time, but if you don't have it attached to the top with magnets like I do, then you should be putting the Teflon over your design each time you press it to protect your platen or your iron from HTV getting on it. I'm just going to let it preheat for about 5 seconds. And now I'm going to line up my design. So I'm going to pull my shirt forward so I can see it. And I'm going to place the design about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below the collar. And because this shirt has a little bit of a thicker seam than the last shirt did, I'm going to stick a pressing pillow inside the shirt to elevate the surface, to elevate the design up as close to the platen as possible and not let the seams get in the way. If you don't have a pressing pillow, you can also use a folded up kitchen towel. Now that everything's in place, I'm going to press my shirt for 15 seconds. So as soon as it's cool enough to the touch, you can remove the transfer sheet. And that's how you apply HTV to a shirt with a heat press. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing to Divine Design Crafts. I put out new videos or go live every week, and I show you tons of different ways that you can use adhesive vinyl, HTV, and lots of other project ideas. If you have any questions about working with HTV, please put them in the comments and I'll definitely answer them for you. I'm Alex Vanover with Divine Design Crafts, and I hope we can craft again soon.